My latest project is to refinish and treat rust on this old boat trailer that's been sitting in the weeds for 8 or 9 years. I knew I had to do some wheel bearing work on it. I pulled the axle off. The left side's pretty good shape. There was a lot of grease leaking around it, but that should be pretty easy to fix. The right side's another story. If you look on the bottom where the inner and outer bearing were resting, the metal on the spindle is eaten away. This axle is an odd length. They don't have it in stock in Alaska, and I'm anxious to get this thing fixed soon, so I'm going to have to get creative. I was able to find bearings and oil seals and other parts to rebuild the hubs on eBay, but I'm going to go to my go-to JB Weld for this axle, and I know that's not recommended, but then I'm going to flip the axle 180 degrees so that the weight of the bearings is resting on the good side, which is currently the top side. After knocking down the roughest areas of build-up metal with a cold chisel, now I just need to prep this really good, make sure it's well degreased, and get that rust scale off, and then I'm going to put JB Weld in here and in here, and then I'm going to shape it to the right diameter. I hit all sides of both spindles pretty well with the wire wheel. Now that I've got the really bad side cleaned up, I can see that it's much less than a quarter of the total diameter that's affected. So that gives me more confidence that this repair is going to be successful. I used an angle grinder cutoff wheel to cut the U-bolts off. Got the leaf springs detached from the axle and cleaned up all the rust on them. You can see this axle has basically no camber, which is why I'm pretty comfortable that I can turn it to any side. I do have these holes that the leaf springs were sitting in. I'm going to have to drill a hole through the other side. I've roughed up the area that's going to get the JB Weld with little small files and then degreased it again. Ready to mix up some JB Weld and put it on. I'm actually using marine weld because it has a slightly higher tensile strength and advertised resistance to petroleum products like the grease that will be in this hub. Once I applied it, I mixed it and applied it, then I used a cleaned up old bearings, slid them on the hub and twisted them around slowly and pulled them off, both the inner and the outer, to get that JB Weld pretty circular. Bottom side of the spindle's a little beat up too. I'm going to put on both sides a little bit of JB Weld in this keyway where the bearing is going to rest, and there's a few more imperfections I want to fill in on this side. I used a block of wood and some 180 grit sandpaper to smooth out this part that the bearing rests on, and then I used a screwdriver, the radius of the screwdriver, to get in there and smooth out the JB Weld there. Now the bearing will fit on just nicely. There are some low spots here that I'll probably fill in. Everything that's still shiny gray is a low spot. Measuring this, it sits on there about right at an inch. On the beat up side, I had JB Weld almost around the entire surface. That bearing goes on right in an inch too. I'm going to rough up these little areas here and then fill in those depressions with another batch of JB Weld. Mixing up some more marine weld. Put a little bit of the JB Weld on the low areas. I think I've got enough material on there to fill in the low spot now. Now we need to let it cure for a day. Sanding this second coat took a lot more work than the first to get it fitted, but that depression is almost completely filled in now, and the bearing fits on there nicely. All that's left to do now is drill these holes on the opposite side that the springs will sit in. Going to work on it with the Dremel tool until I can get the drill bit to fit in there. And the boat trailer is finished. Installed the hubs with new races and bearings on the axles, new U-bolts holding the leaf springs and the axle together. This thing is ready to pick up a boat now.